This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink. I'm here with Ted Chilowitz and Rony for This Week in XR. It is Friday, May 31st. Amy Peck is our guest, CEO of EndeavorXR. She has quite a perspective on the whole industry and is an old friend of ours. Meanwhile, we have something more important happening on the show today. It is our co-host Ted Chilowitz's. Is it the 6-0? I think it may be.
It is the big 6-0.
Damn.
I am
Well, welcome
birthday,
to the
Ted.
club.
60 years old today. 60 years young today.
Old enough to know better.
Yeah.
Well, Ted, do you have that Hollywood alien agelessness? Like you could be in your 40s, you could be 80, you could, like it's one of those like hard to tell, like rock stars, they just hit a certain point where they just always look the same age after 30. And you definitely have that going on.
I very much appreciate it. I have to tell you guys this morning, well, I'm at a friend's house in Laguna for our little birthday holiday weekend.
Did you party pretty hard?
We partied last night pretty hard. There was some tequila involved. And this morning, as well, we were doing, for the last hour, we were doing yoga, which was wonderful and painful.
Is that a party thing, or is that like a recovery?
That's the detox thing after the party thing. And then today is my actual birthday. But I was thinking how grateful I am to have two cohorts like you that I get to spend time with every week talking about the fun and interesting things that we like and like engage us. And it's great to just know, my wife was like, do you think you should cancel the podcast this morning? Cause like, it's your birthday. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think I want to do the podcast this morning because it's like part of my weekly ritual when I get a chance to do it. It's been a really great journey. So I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Ted.
In every possible way. And all our listeners too, that allow us to do this every week.
Rony wanted to sing. I don't know. It's singing on Zoom.
Yeah,
let's try it. Like Charlie now. Happy
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear.
Insert name here.
Ted.
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 Wait, can I be an AI for 1 second?
Sure.
Happy birthday, Ted.
Yeah, that would be the 80s AI from the movies, right?
Or the OpenAI her ripoff.
Yeah, these days it sounds
Hello, Ted.
Sounds exactly like a human, which is even more terrifying.
So you should have Scarlett Johansson sing you happy birthday in the voice of the AI from her. That would have been kind of
I'm so disappointed that didn't happen, actually. That would have been just so
Scarlett, if you're out there and you want to call into the show and sing happy birthday for Ted, that would be really awesome. We're big fans of Black Widow and Marvel, so anyway.
So here we are with the news, the big news, $6 billion for XAI. $6 billion. So he's pretty serious about competing with OpenAI. I'm sure it's going to connect up with Tesla's live map of the world. And yikes, Elon Musk thinks big.
These just astronomical funds, these astronomical amounts going into, you've heard me say it many times in this podcast, the Seven Sisters effect, right? Everybody's got to have an AI now. Everybody's got to have an LLM now. Everybody's got to do it, kind of thing. It's a little bonkers.
Guess who is mixed up with financing it? Andreessen.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Sequoia, Andreessen,
and Rony's friend, Prince Alwaleed bin Talal and Kingdom Holding.
All the usual suspects. Yeah.
So that's where you find $6 billion.
Wow.
So, and here's another good one that I think you're going to like, Rony. Google and Magic Leap are back in a tree.
Oh my.
KISSING.
How long have
By
you
the
known
way,
this, Rony? Without revealing any inside information, how long have you known this was coming?
well, I posted something yesterday. I think Charlie alluded to it,
Yeah.
which was the reminder for folks who had no idea. Um, but basically, 10 years ago, Google led a $500 million plus
Yes, I
round,
remember. Very,
which had a
That
very
lot of
was
really
promising.
crazy stories around it.
that was the moment when Magic Leap really hit the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The part that which was in the post I put on Twitter X, but just for you guys, the really cool thing was the guy that did diligence first before Larry and Sergey was the head of engineering at Google, a brilliant engineer named Alan Eustace, managed like 10, 15,000 people at Google. He's one of the legends. 2 days, sorry, 3 days um, after we're funded, he breaks the world record for the high altitude jump. So there's this weird cosmic magic leap connection, and it all came together. Like the year after they funded us, we had Alan come to the company, and he showed the film of him jumping from the stratosphere, and he was basically the ultimate magic leap. So there was a really weird time where the head of Google's engineering takes magic leaps from the edge of outer space. Larry was doing moonshots. But like when you compare that to what Charlie just said about the 6 billion for X, there was a sense of optimism and like more hopefulness to it. Like the 6 billion going to X doesn't make me feel hopeful. It makes
Yeah.
me feel Death Star.
Yeah, I agree.
And there was a different view, a different like Disney-ish optimism about
Yeah.
doing good things. And it's like it's unclear to me what some of the money is going to do and what their plans are. It feels more like the Empire Strikes Back mode right now, and maybe back then it had a little more like the Jedi's were winning. So I think we got to take back the night.
I think that's a very good and apt way to look at the psychology is the what would Walt do? What would Walt do right now? Would Walt be doing this? And I don't think the answer is yes. I think fundamentally he would be doing similar things, but with very different goals and aims, right?
And different
And
structures to AI.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but we had a saying at Magic Leap, which was, "What would Walt do?"
Mm,
WWWD. And John Gade and I used to talk about that all the time. And it was like, is this something that, because he had this expansive, creative, and technical view of the world, but had a positive worldview. And I
mhm.
think a lot of the things that are going on in tech right now have that positive removed. It's more of
Yeah.
a world dominating view. And that's a different mindset altogether.
It's also these days it also feels like what is the way we can maximize profits view? And I don't think, certainly Walt Disney was a very successful enterprise, but maybe I'm stretching here, but I don't think that Walt's primary goal ever was to maximize profits and make money. I think it was a byproduct of the success of what he aspired to. I
But
mean,
Ted,
Charlie, you would know this
you're
intimately.
describing all of corporate America.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So,
Mhm.
the corporations used to be much more paternalistic.
Mm,
Shareholders were investing in a company's culture and stability as much as anything else. And in the 80s, things changed because people started managing for the stock price,
mhm.
not dividend, stock price.
Yeah.
And it has changed corporate America really radically.
And it's certainly changed entertainment. It will never be unchanged now that way because of what the association with stock price and market cap and market valuation
Mm.
as it relates to what is our primary goal here? Is it our stock price or is it entertaining the public? And certainly these days it's the stock price, right? In the age of Charlie Chaplin, I don't think he would say it was the stock price. So it's interesting how things have changed.
We've just gone through a period in which the entertainment conglomerates grew fantastically, both in value and also in size through mergers and acquisitions, to the point where, um, and then they launched the streaming services and positioned themselves that like tech companies. Like they're going to grow so fast, they should have an exponential valuation. And that happened for a while.
Yeah.
And it was terrible for talent because talent doesn't participate in that run up in stock price. They participate only in the specific piece of IP to which they contributed. So the studios managed to effectively shift the profit away from artists, and it's all in the name of pleasing shareholders. Now they're in a difficult spot because entertainment companies used to be about box office and intellectual property, and that affected their share price. You know, having a big hit movie affected their share price. It's not true anymore.
Yeah.
That's the unknown, right? Like if you're Bob Iger, who was trying to restore this balance between shareholder value, but also like loves the creative, reinvigorated Imagineering, was a believer in Walt's vision. Now, like box office isn't really a metric.
No.
Streaming is something they try to get under control, kind of works, but then AI comes along. People like Epic and Fortnite come along, Roblox comes along. So what does that mean? They don't have a handle on it anymore
Mm-hmm.
in the traditional way, right? There's other things taking off, TikTok and virtual worlds, and it's all in flux. And Ted, you're obviously living in that flux, looking at where Paramount is going and
Yeah,
all
of
this
course.
craziness.
Well, Iger and his team are certainly trying to grab on to that in some way, shape, or form with the investment in Epic, with the commitment of $60 billion over the next 10 years into live and themed entertainment and resorts and attractions. It's pretty clear to anybody in our industry when you look at again, now we'll go back to stock value market cap, but the strongest market cap companies are the entertainment companies that have really leaned into themed attractions and live, go to the place entertainment. And the weakest entertainment companies are the ones that shied away from it and chose to license all of that IP to other entities. And you're talking about a 10x, 20x difference between the ones that own theme parks and the ones that don't. So it's pretty obvious to all of us where the market has gone and where people can spend money and companies can profit. And it's certainly not on screen-based entertainment anymore.
Here's our guest.
And speaking of all this fun,
Amy, welcome to the show again. You were on
Hi.
this show at the beginning, and here we are still at the beginning.
yes, you were one of our very first guests, right, Amy?
I know. I'm like bookending this, but this is going to go, hopefully this show goes on forever.
It's possible. It's possible. Although some people have real jobs and that interferes with it.
Well, there you go. There you go.
But
By
anyway,
the way,
great
this is not my actual living room. This just happens to be my palatial hotel room in Calgary, but it's decidedly gray.
So this is funny because you said to me when I booked you for the show, you're now living back in the United States, and here you are in Calgary.
Well, yes, exactly. I'm still technically living on United Airlines.
I see. So
I know that feeling. I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a countdown to see each other at AWE. Ted will be there. We're doing a little podcast thing from the stage next on Thursday, the 20th. And of course, AWE, such a great event. The whole community convenes. The big guys aren't sucking all the air out of the room. And the conference is terrific and well curated. So I always learn things. I love seeing everybody. So hopefully listeners, I know a lot of our listeners we see at the show. And last year, a lot of people commented on the podcast, which is getting some
good
traction.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're doing it on the 20th because that's the only day that I can make it. And Avi Barzev and I are going to do a fireside chat from the future in the year 2040, reminiscing about the last 15 years.
That'll be fascinating. Amy, when we look at the four of us here, for anybody that's watching this podcast versus listening to it, I would say you are among the folks that have had more time under the hood in the world of mixed reality, virtual reality for various pursuits and kind of enterprise and creative use than maybe anybody I know. You have such wealth and depth of perception on this. I think it would be just interesting to start the conversation with how do you reflect on the last, call it 10 years of our journey together? And to your point, where do we reflect on the next 10 years? Because you're one of those people that knows the guts of this industry better than anybody. So I'm curious how.
I love that you use the word perception, and then we have Rony here with us of Magic Leap, because that's really what Magic Leap was about, is this sort of perception and spatial awareness, and really where we're going in the future. And I think when I first saw actually VR for the first time back in like 2012, I think it was right after the release of the DK1. It just stopped me in my tracks. And I think that's why, you know, events like AWE and all of us have sort of bonded over the capability of the technology. And when you say under the hood, I would say that I started and was interested in the unsexy part of the business from day one. Just, you know, enterprise utility. How do we improve processes? But it became clear over the last decade or so that that's really where we were going to get the foothold with the technology, where we were going to be able to push the technology and find real utility. So, and then my entire career has just been driven by truly just a passion for the technology and what it can do, and working with amazing clients over the years, including Magic Leap. It was definitely post you, Rony, but I still have a lot of love for the technology. Which maybe leads us into you know, some of what you were talking about, you know, in your early this week in XR, about Google and Magic Leap. If we want to move over to that,
yeah,
I think
that's a really interesting one. It's like they were the first love of Magic Leap, and I wrote something about it yesterday, which was like the exuberance of the Larry Sergey running Google days.
I included a link to that in my column, by the way.
Yeah. And Amy, I don't know if you tracked it, but what was really interesting was like when Larry stepped back, there was a sea change at Google. So we were one of the moonshots, and to have moonshots go, you need to have that, like, whether you call it founder imperative, founder craziness, but you have to have that, like Mark does at Meta, to push things like XR into reality. And then when you step back and you bring in a kind of operator who serves at the pleasure of the board, isn't the founder or the founder imperative, everything changes. And I lived through that change. It was very distinct. And I think it reshaped the whole future of XR to some extent.
and it's like today, you know, ML2, and I think it's 18 layers of optics, if I remember correctly. I mean, it is far and away in its class the best device out there. We're just not ready for it with the expense, and there's still the kind of cumbersome. I mean, you were a little too far ahead of your time. But you know, I am heartened that Google, and we know, you know, there's been a lot of waves with
the merit. Yeah, it all comes back around again. It's like the orbit of Google is back.
Yeah, but you know, they have had, you know, some of the best optical engineers, a lot of whom were, you know, some from Magic Leap, and a lot from HoloLens. So they have, you know, this sort of OG set of optical engineers that have been ferreting away on the R&D side. And then they've brought in, you know, some folks from Qualcomm now on the business side to really start to shape the vision. So I'm really heartened. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I do have a lot of love for Magic Leap. I did spend 2 years with them, just kind of shaping the go-to-market around ML2, and then how to buoy the market. So I'm still rooting. I know you are. I know we all are.
Amy, I wish you had come by pre-pandemic, because right up until the pandemic, there was going on like multiple future. You know, you talk about the discussion from 2040. I could have walked you through the building and go, here's like today, here's 5 years from now. Let's go downstairs. Here's the 2030s. Here's the 2040s. We had teams like all the way out to what I called ML Infinity, working on like, I don't know, 6 or 7 generations past like ML2. And it was kind of insane because like we wanted to like live in that unevenly distributed future. So it was kind of like a lot of that future was living in our building. And everyone thought they were sort of time travelers. And then when they got like pollinated into the universe, it was like the space-time continuum like normalized. But for a while we were, I mean, Ted knows this, we were living in a different time space inside that building. And it's a little sad because it was so awesome to live that. We want everyone to feel it, and the rest of the world is just moving much more slowly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
made,
And
I made
I think
many,
culturally, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead,
I said,
Ted.
I made many visits there. Spent a lot of time with Rony in sort of what I would call the glory days of Magic Leap. And it was, to put a point on it, it was truly a magical place. Like you would show up, and every time I went, I would be giddy with excitement as to what would Rony show me today.
Charlie's so angry because he never got to go there, and Ted
It
did.
was so special.
Oh,
Like,
no.
You
it
don't
was such a
remember, Rony?
special
I
thing.
interviewed you in 2018 for my follow-up book to Metaverse
Oh my
called
God, you did. Oh my
Convergence.
God, I'm so sorry. You did.
Yeah, we spent
Oh, you
several
were in my
hours
office
together.
with Neil Stevenson.
Yes, that's right.
Yes,
I
you
It's
guys-
saw the
amazing.
sword. Rony
I
made
used to
a
get lost.
samurai
I used to
sword
get
for you.
lost in Plantation. That office, it was just,
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd have to I'd have to spatially anchor whatever desk I picked for that day and like water, because I'd go to another floor and then I'd come back and be like, where did I
So,
post up?
Amy, you came in the Peggy era.
I was in the Peggy era, but I will say that because after the riff and there was this real step change, but there was still a faction from the early days.
Like the remnants hanging out, like little bits.
The
of
rebel
but like
force still fighting,
they
still
kept
holding
the
the
candle
resistance.
lit. They kept the candle lit, and you'll know some of the people that I'm
Yeah.
referring to, but especially downstairs, really in the bowels, where like state of the art manufacturing, state of the art engineering. Like I used to love to go down there and just watch them, working on their QA passes, and it's different because it was moving from this crazy teenager to like graduating with a degree and then trying to become an adult as a technology and a company.
Mm.
But I really believe that all of these companies, and you alluded to this, you need someone who is living in the ether to force people to get out of their day-to-day dynamic and push them to great invention. And every great invention has had someone at the helm saying, you're going to do the impossible. And if it's the right kind of leader, then you'll be the Pied Piper and you will lead people there.
You know what's great that you brought that up, because what attracted for a period of time some of the smartest people on the planet was the challenge of doing the impossible. And once you go from the impossible to the normative, those people disperse.
Mhm.
And then companies wonder, where did the innovation go? Why are we now moving slowly? Why is nothing happening? But when you say we're going to go to the moon, we're going to do impossible things, out of the woodwork, the smartest, brightest, most creative people all want to go there because that's what they're built for.
Yeah.
And it's like an unstable element, and you can't have it's like the Beatles. You can only have that for a period of time. But I think it was like this really magical time, and I think it's like to be in those is just a special thing. And like anyone who's been in it wants to recreate it again.
Yeah.
But most of the time, companies are in normal mode, adult mode. But when you go to that special mode where it's just like Willy Wonka in the factory, it's just like there's like magic in the air. I don't know, sparkles.
So it's like companies should be able to bring in Rony for like 6 months when they're at that point.
Yeah, no, but
just for like a jolt of vision from 2040.
Yeah. It's how, like, when we work with companies, if you're kind of helping them with just pure play technology innovation, we say you've got to take this, you've got to get air cover from the CEO, you've got to take it out of the day-to-day and the day-to-day dynamic, and you've got to stop pointing them at the just incrementally improving your bottom line or processes or whatever it is. And you've got to take them out, and you've got to build a vision of the product and services of the future, and then start layering in technology to get there. It is a very hard sell. I will tell you, there are very few companies that are built to do that.
I'm really glad you brought that up. That was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today. Because 10 years ago, when we started talking about this, we thought enterprise would lead the way. And I don't think we fully understood the depth of friction that we were bringing that technology to. And what's turned out, which is the opposite of many cases, is that this is not happening in entrepreneurial small companies because they're doing all they can to keep up. They don't have excess resources. The places where innovation are happening are places like Lockheed and Boeing, giant companies that are not afraid of technology, for whom an incremental increase could mean tens of millions of dollars. And that's who seems to have jumped on first. And others have been slower. And I think this has hurt a lot of companies in this vertical. I think it's hurt Vuzix. I've talked to Paul Travers, the CEO. He's been on the show, and they certainly were thinking adoption would be much faster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And they actually had a much easier device to deploy in
But they
these
have great
environments as well.
technology, and so many companies do. And so many companies do have a deep understanding of how that technology can be applied, including Magic Leap, which, speaking of the ML2, there has been no shortage of fantastic demos of obvious use cases.
Yeah.
And
And
they're
it was
such
funny
that a
because
writer like me, I saw it and like, oh, everybody's going to be doing this.
I mean, it is incredible. When I first saw, ML2, I mean, I not only could I not believe the level of fidelity and the fidelity of the color, and then there's global dimming and then the segmented dimming, to really, which no one had been able to do prior. And I know this was on the docket, right? A long time before we actually saw it, Rony, and I know ML3 and ML4 as well. But it's amazing how well documented the ROI in the simplest use cases. See what I see. That's still what people are asking for, right? Training, in situ instruction, all of the things we know work really well. Double digits ROI in pretty much every single case, provable and scalable. And we just don't get, we're in like a best case pilot jail, mostly POC jail. It's confounding in a lot of ways.
I'll play a little bit of the devil's advocate here and see how you all react to this, because certainly I agree with everything you're saying, but I think part of the reason that a lot of these companies don't achieve exit velocity and or escape velocity and don't achieve this kind of dream of everybody using these things is because the human condition is defined and refined by certain use cases and proof points, right? And the idea of wearable devices is more exotic than I think the market at large perceives. Like, and this is maybe hard to hear from someone who's so bullish and so gregarious about wearable stuff, is that I don't necessarily think wearables in any form will ever sort of overtake the form factors that we use in more commonplace use cases around screens. I think they slowly chip away. They find their use cases, they find their value points, they find their understandings. But there are massive technical challenges, and Rony and I talk about this all the time, and we talked about this at South by Southwest, around the compute weight distribution. Where do you wear it? Where do you put it? And how you create the field of view of these devices that truly make them magical, which no one has really cracked the code yet, right? So I just like, the reason why people don't have theme parks in their living rooms is we have VR in our living rooms, but you don't have full theme parks in your living rooms, is because theme parks are sort of exotic beasts, right? They can only exist in so many places. And the advancements of these wearables are still going to be exotic for many, many, many cycles until all of these problems get solved.
So
this is an interesting debate.
Even though it's your birthday, I'm going to be contrarian for a second. Now,
this is why I like to talk about this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's Ted's birthday.
Happy birthday.
And then jump in. But here's the heartbreaking part. And I'm going to use an analogy. There was a team assembled at NASA that made it to the moon. And that team, when it disassembled, like there was just like nothing going on for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And then the shot, I mean, it's like, then basically like until SpaceX, like the huge exhaust. The sad thing is the ML2 that you saw was coming out of the factory in Q1 2020.
It's nuts.
And I'll tell you this, Gen 3 was going to ship in 22 and Gen 4 would have shipped this year. Yeah. And the trajectory we're on was what you have with like better than 90-degree field of view. And we were going to hit a wireless level and we've been on like second or third iteration of silicon with AMD. It was an entirely different trajectory. So unfortunately, the universe intervened. There was a pandemic, the economy crashed. Won't get into all of it. But when you disassemble such a concentration of people moving at such force and velocity at something, the remnants of that and the dispersion of that into the market does not put that back on track. So I don't know if that set us back like a decade, but I know that the number of combinations of things you need to do to get this right is like in the hundreds of billions. So I could
Absolutely.
have $80 billion at Meta, and maybe I'm running 30 combinations of 800 billion, and does not mean I'm getting it right. You actually need to have the right people in the room aiming at the right target. And I think for a while we did. And somehow, and this was like Icarus, like maybe the universe said, no, we do not want you to do that. So it was very disconcerting for the folks who are in the middle of that. But the sad thing is, like, what you have on right now was like, we were on a landing path for that. And now people talk about that in the 2030s.
Yeah.
And it's not time, it's the concentration of brains and effort and focus. And I think that's my counterpoint to Ted. The reason it's going to take so long is now we have a diffusion of effort and we have a diffusion of vision. It'll eventually get there, but it's going to cost so much more money because you got all these combinations, like people banging things on typewriters hoping to come up with Shakespeare at some point. That's not how
So
you do.
now we're going to run it all through AI and just help it distill the code down to the shortest path, right? For those incremental, the next incremental breakthroughs until we get to the moonshot moment. But we may have BCIs that'll hack our retinas before we get these things right. So
that is what I have been saying. I think that there will be wearables, but they'll be built around AI, not optics. Optics will be nice to have, but the point is sensors and a way to process the information that they're generating. And to me, that's real AR, and the optics of it add a great new layer, but are going to take a while because of the physics that we've been talking about and just the sort of uneven advance of technology, in particular battery technology. But there are other issues such as heat that come from the projectors. Not necessarily just from the battery. So there's heat all over that headset. But it's being solved. You see companies like XReal dealing with that. I know another favorite Rony company, but they're making advancements, and they are incremental. They're finding new audiences, so I still have hope. But it's just everything takes 10 times longer than you think it will.
Well, I cannot wait to see this thing that Meta has been teasing, that Boz has been talking about, this holy grail device that somehow has solved all these time-space physics problems.
By the way, I closing the Magic Leap conversation, those guys have spent $100 billion. Rony only had 5% of that.
Well, and the question is,
less.
Yeah.
with all that capital, this thing that they've been touting and saying, don't worry, we've got this amazing thing that's just around the corner. Will all of us be unbelievably disappointed by this, or is it going to live up to that tease point? And it's sort of similar to the last couple of years with all the Apple hype, and then the reality of what that device is, which, as you know, we've talked about many times, has amazing, remarkable characteristics and qualities, but is not the holy grail by any stretch of the imagination, right?
So Amy, I've had some inside baseball on that, but you probably have. What's your take on it? And I'd love to give my take to you.
Well, it was
on the
really
Meta holy grail.
The Meta magic thing.
Meta, I kind of will even go back to, Apple kind of joining the party, but the fact that they had to make it, just part of that closed iOS ecosystem to give it the level of functionality that even starts to give us, day-to-day utility. That's where we've missed, right? Is the day-to-day utility. That is why we had metaverse hype, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden you've got OpenAI, ChatGPT, and you got 90-year-olds and 9-year-olds can find a way to use it today with zero learning curve. And that is just is part of the problem with the technology in general, is that we don't have a reason to use it every day.
Exactly my point. Yes.
In our personal lives, right?
Yes.
So there's definitely the enterprise focus and there's definitely use cases, but that day-to-day utility, like the way that our faces are on our phones all day long, like we just haven't hit that marker. But I do think it's going to be a confluence of these kind of like biometric, these smart fabrics. They're going to like everything is going to be an input device and everything is going to be an output device, including our own physicality. And then we're going to start to blend that data and merge it in a way that essentially just gives us sort of a very personalized contextual understanding of what environment we're in, what we're trying to accomplish, what data we need, what information we need, and the way we access it is going to be multimodal. That's if I wake up and I'm queen of all things tomorrow. That's how I'm going to build it.
And here's a question for you, like, irrespective of whatever Meta does, and I think many of us will be like, oh, okay, we already know what that is. And one of the reasons I know what that is one of our top guys at Magic Leap is now running that program at Meta. So I know, without getting into a lot
You
of
know
detail,
where they're going with it.
yeah, it's like it's where we were going, without doubt. So, but here's the thing: I always believe the killer app for AR was AI.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and the reason was something that sees what you see, knows where you are, understands you contextually, and then having an AI like your own Jarvis in that was much better than holding up a pin or something else because it's hands free. And if you get it to like what you and I have on and it's like put on and forget, no
Yep.
wire, that in my mind was the unlock for all day, every day.
Yep.
And
And then depending on where I am or what I'm doing, it can be gesture, it can be gaze, it can be voice, it can be, any number of
contextual
things.
OS.
And eventually just thought, right? I'm going to be able to control it with, whatever chipset I've put into my head.
Why do you think that is not coming together fast enough? Like you have people like Apple, like Google, like Meta with insane resources, like
Mhm.
1000x more than I had at Magic Leap. What is stopping them from going there or getting there now? Like I did not see a barrier, but what's your view of what is actually prohibiting them from pulling all that together now?
Well, the shareholders, number one, because the economics of it is, it's just, it's an aggressive spend. And by the way, if you get every single thing right, you still have to go to market. You still have to convince people to put these things on their faces, to implant them, to learn how to, prompting actually, it's a thing. It's not easy to do. If you really want to leverage the capability of generative AI, you have to learn how to, it's not prompting. I just call it urging. It's more urging. I need to just urge it in the direction I want it to go. And as soon as that does, each one of the bucket of, resources and investment for every single avenue, right, that have to happen in silos, right? Because the level of expertise is going to be limited to that particular technology and that particular solution set. Then you get it out there. Now, how do you integrate it all in a way that is seamless for humans? Biggest UI UX exercise in the world.
Yeah. That's why it remains in this exotic zone for me. That's kind of you're sort of making my point that like these things will be exotic and edge case for many, many, many cycles because there's so many individualized problems to solve that if you look at the steps that it took to get us to the smartphone generation, it's that same sort of thing. It's the correlation, the sort of everything coalesces to allow a mobile device to actually replace something that was much heavier and much clunkier and give you the UI and give you the fidelity and give you the portability and give you the network capability of a cell phone network that allows it to all.
Miniaturized compute. I mean, that's what it
All
all
those steps, right, are extraordinarily complicated and get more and more complicated as we try to make it invisible, right? And that's kind of the big challenge. It's kind of why we all have still like valuable careers.
I have a very Amy, I have a very like direct question for you. What is pulling you into this field? It is like a maddening field on some level. It's so full of promise, but why are you in it? Why are you so passionate about it? Why are you in it for so long? What's the gravitational pull?
It's the possibility of really, and it sounds very lofty, but I do hold it to be true. It is the promise of elevating human capability. That's really, for me, at my core, like what I care about, and changing our belief systems around limitation. Because we're often visual creatures and we don't understand the art of the possible unless somebody else breaks that barrier first. But I think we can all be crazy Ronys and Steve Jobs, and we all have that capacity. We've just, through our sort of system of education and the way that we, adult, we lose that visionary capability, but it's in there, it's built in. I mean, it is the thing that is going to buoy us against, AI, and allow us to actually merge with AI, as opposed to them, AI getting, ultimately powerful and realizing that we are the source of the problem. That we're just the ones slowing the AI down.
So
Yeah, I mean, I
AWE,
think there's so much human potential that we can unlock through technology.
so I was going to bring up AWE and sort of wrap up the show here. It's in a little less than 3 weeks. Ori Inbar, the co-founder of AWE, is going to be on the show next week for a curtain raiser. Last year, 2023, which seems like about 5 minutes ago, AWE was giddy with the possibility of the Vision Pro. And there was stuff about AI kind of percolating around. Okay, 2024. What do you think the theme is going to be? I guess AI and how XR and AI are going to come together. Is that what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, I think it feels like two AI coin. One is, leveraging AI to kind of improve breakthrough on the, engineering side, and just pure just, democratizing coding, helping us get the engineering and the approaches to technology, just to, rapidly iterate on that cycle. The second is in the user experience and having a much more organic around generative AI, around intent, around fast tracking our capability to, have whatever output whether it's creative or whether it's business related. And then how that integrates just into our existing technology in a way that makes it easy for us. This is the problem, because we're fundamentally lazy as humans. Like, we don't want to learn new tricks. So generative AI has really sparked this kind of creativity. And I think instead of everyone being an influencer as they are now, I think everyone is going to be a creator. And all of these tools are just allowing us to express ourselves in different ways. And then you're seeing the monetization bubble up right behind it.
Okay, so here is the count the jelly beans questions for all of us. At AWE in the next 3 weeks, how many companies will, in their branding or their moniker or their signage at the show, have the word AI in their company name? Who wants to go first?
Hopefully spelled correctly.
98%.
Yes, I was going to say a percentage. Yeah.
Of the companies.
Yeah.
That would be embarrassing.
Yeah, that would be embarrassing. I'm going to say 22. I'm going to say 22 companies. Charlie, you and I are going to have to walk around the floor and count.
Well, there are 300 companies exhibiting, so I would guess about 25%.
So you're a bigger number than me.
So are you talking about like in their overall, yeah, I think it's
in their branding, in their marketing.
Much higher than that.
You think 100 out of 300?
Oh, yeah, easily.
Well, that'd be 30%.
Let's do it. Let's go walk the floor.
All right, we're going to go see.
I think you're going to see. I don't know if you're going to see it in their signage and in their branding, but it'll be the first thing they say to you.
Yes, absolutely. That for sure.
We're integrating AI.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always been AI, Amy. It's always been AI.
Well, and it was funny because I judged I'm here at a VC conference, and so I was judging, 5 companies on their pitch competition. They all had AI, and they were all lovely companies. And there's 50 companies here. They've all, and I would say, and I'm trying to be nice here, but only 20% of them, the AI was additive. The rest was like, we're putting in AI to do really nothing better than we could do before AI.
Just to make sure people think we're relevant. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that backwards notion of like the tail wagging the dog with technology. It's like, and our clients, like I started my company with companies saying we need to, implement VR. But then the first question is why? Why do you need to do that?
That's a great place to end the podcast. And Amy, I told you, Amy was like, what are we going to talk about? Like, Amy, we never have a problem.
And we went way off book too, which I also love.
It's great to bat it all around with you.
Kind of the fifth Beatle of the podcast.
I know. I know. Well, she's only got 3 more shows to go for the green jacket.
The jacket, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, Amy, the green jacket is a myth. I still do not have my green jacket.
Oh, you're kidding.
I did get a We Love Tim handmade shirt. So,
all right. Well, that's
and
good.
you had to make the shirt yourself.
And I had to make
it myself.
All right, everybody. That's our show. We'll see you next Friday with Ori Inbar. Amy, I love you. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.